Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the McAuley Tucker Show. I'm your host, McAuley Tucker, and today we have a very special guest, Tristan. And so if you don't know who he is, he's an actor. He's been in a few projects, one of them being the new season of the Netflix TV show Stranger Things, which is a very, very well-known TV show. You played a small role in that TV show involving a character by the name of Two in numerous flashback scenes. We'll try our best not to spoil anything in this interview, but we'll talk about the character and talk about your experience as well as how you fell in love with just acting and what got you to this point. And so that kind of goes to our first question that I have, just going right back to the beginning. What got you interested in acting?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting, the talk that we had before we started recording, which is I actually got into acting because I was also very shy growing up. And it started as just this easy way to make friends because something about having a script to say to people breaks the tension, breaks the ice, and it made it very easy for me to get out of my shell. The more that I explored it, the more I fell in love with it. I eventually went to a performing arts high school in Dallas called Booker T. Washington High School for the Performing and Visual Arts, which you have to take a nice big breath to say. And from there, I started to really fall in love with acting from the sense of having an outlet to embrace vulnerability. I think that especially men, society kind of builds them up as needing to be these stoic, strong providers. And I think acting became this really safe way to explore the softer side. And it's allowed me to start embracing more of that vulnerability and put it in the public atmosphere without being scared of it being judged or anything like that. And I think that, anytime we can encourage men to be vulnerable and we can put that across on screen and show people that it's safe for that to happen, I think, it's a good thing.
Exactly. You mentioned plays and going to a school that was about the art, and I'm assuming that there was probably numerous play productions over the years. Were you ever given the opportunity to play a major role in any of these plays, if they did them? But I'm assuming they did.
Ish. Not like technically. When I was at Booker T, I mostly was like very background supporting characters. One of my favorite roles, simply because I had a couple friends that didn't go to the school come to actually see me in this play. It was this character called Mr. Man, and literally my role was to be dragged across stage while I was dead and then be dragged right off stage again a little bit later. And everyone talked to me, they were like, so you were just dead the entire time? Yeah, what'd you think? Did you like my death? It actually, funny enough, wasn't until so after high school, I moved to Los Angeles for a couple of years. I tried to do pretty much just film. I didn't really go out for anything theater-based when I was out there. I failed in a major way out there, got broke, and didn't really do everything I necessarily wanted to do. And so it wasn't until I actually came back to Texas 2 years after I moved out there that I got back into theater, and then I booked my first ever lead theater role in this community theater production of Delirium's Daughters at Rover Drama Works. And that's what reignited my spark, because I really, it's funny, I went to LA to be an actor, but because of just the hustle and bustle culture and because of just the way I didn't properly spend my time, I didn't really act the entire time I was out there. So it wasn't until I got back to Texas I got to actually fall back in love with it.
You mentioned, going to LA and just it didn't really go well for you. Kind of an interesting question involving that. How were you able to, emotionally kind of get through that? Was there any tricks and things that you're like, okay, that would help you get out of this struggle?
Oh gosh, to be completely honest, I didn't. I think that I kind of shut down, and I think that it was very easy for me to get in this very isolated mental headspace where I would just kind of block out everything and live in my own world. And to be honest, I can't say I worked through it until I got back to Texas and started rebuilding a community. And I think that really, to specifically answer your question, it was coming back to Texas and having a community of people again that helped pull me out of that, because I do think that we can heavily underestimate just how important it is to have those meaningful relationships in life, and prioritizing that over any specific location, because you're going to be miserable if you don't have the right people around you, no matter where you're at.
Exactly. You mentioned, finally getting into a play. What was it like? Just, was this your first time, main role in a play, would you say?
It definitely, so it was a funny experience too, because I had been back in town for, I want to say, like 5 or 6 months, just dawdling my thumbs, not really doing anything, because I was lucky enough to get an agent my last month that I was out there. So I was still like auditioning for things here and there. And I got very attached to all of that. And I let that turn me into a very reactive person that was just doing things that were sent to me instead of being proactive, which is similar to what we talked about, where I have spent much of my adult life going back to just the proactive, wanting to just constantly create things type of person I was in high school. So
yeah,
all of that to say, I randomly was in the shower. I have my most meditational thoughts in the shower. I do this thing where I turn off all the lights because it like simulates this like womb in a way, as weird as it may sound. It's very comforting, and I just not disassociate, but it's like borderline disassociation. But I randomly was just like, you know what? I'm gonna just do a theater show. I haven't acted in a long time. I want to find a way to start taking control back over my life. And so I went on my phone. I looked up just the closest theater production that was auditioning, and then I found Delirium's Daughters, which the final audition day was that day in like a couple of hours. So I like did this whole gear shift, ran to that audition room. I was one of the very last people to audition, and then ended up booking it. And I think that I definitely had forgotten how amazing it feels to actually like be told that you're the choice for something, because I think it's easy after so much rejection from so many projects to, I don't know, forget, I guess, the elation of being the choice, which was really cool. And then being able to, with it being my first lead role, actually dive into something further than just a superficial, like, oh, here's my couple of lines, I think in this, and boom, that's all it is. And so it was cool to kind of develop a process.
Right.
In that.
Involving this play, how would you say, in this specific play, how has this helped you right now? How did it impact you in any way after this play? Did it teach you anything that you've applied to your life now?
100%. So in terms of like how it has impacted where I am now, I was in a phase of about to give up. I was about to give up because I was back in Texas. I wasn't really booking anything. And it felt like it was something that was impossible for me. And so I was really looking to go back to school. I was still trying to decide what to do. I ended up going and volunteering at this physical therapy clinic to get hours so I might be able to go to physical therapy school and do something like that. But it wasn't until I did that play that I really started to remember why I loved acting as much as I did. And the biggest thing that I learned, so I heard it phrased in this way by Jim Carrey, but it's still very much so the lesson that I learned throughout that process, which is you can fail at what you don't love doing. So why not fail at what you love doing instead? And it was this whole idea where I realized I would rather not make a name for myself in this field, but be happy than go down a different path and be miserable. And so the pure joy of creation that I had during that play reminded me, oh, this is what it's about. This is what all of this prep, all of this work is for that feeling right there. And I realized I would do anything to have that feeling.
That's super awesome to hear. Just kind of hearing that motivation after this play. What got you back into getting some of these film roles? I mean, looking through your work, I'm not sure how accurate this is, but looking through the years, you've worked on some shorts as well. 2016, 2017. I think something that stood out for me looking through this was you worked on The Gifted. Is that correct?
Yeah, so fun fact actually. So The Gifted filmed in Texas. I'll say two fun facts actually. So I worked as a photo double for Percy Hines White, who played like the main kid. And because Texas was a right to work state, I was allowed to spend a crazy amount of hours. And this was when I was in high school. So I would be staying out until like 4 a.m., having just recently got my driver's license, by the way, and missing school because I was on set and filming with Marvel, which was super cool. But one of the PAs that was kind of in charge of handling all the photo doubles, I actually met again on set of Stranger Things because she was one of the PAs on Stranger Things as well, in charge of hurdling all the actors and the photo doubles. So it was this really cool, like, full circle moment where this is someone that I worked with back in high school when I had all of the drive, all of the spirit. I lost it through a couple of years where I was kind of in the metaphorical wilderness. And then finally my first big booking, it was super cool. But all of that kind of short film stuff, all of that was in high school. Like I went to LA and it was nothing for quite a while. I didn't really do a whole lot of acting, despite that being what I went there for. And then I joined this local acting class called The Extra Mile with Glenn Morshower. He's a working actor that has been series regular on a couple of shows. He has been in a couple big movies like Transformers and stuff like that. He's known as he was on the Jimmy Kimmel show for being nominated for the award of being that guy that was in that thing, as one of those people you see everywhere but you never remember their name. But that's where I started to really specifically build a film community in Texas after kind of coming back. And it's like I said earlier, it really is all about community. I think the biggest successes I've ever had came when I started to prioritize community over isolation.
In what ways have you been able to grow your community? Just like over these years, you've been talking about community. Have you found it difficult at all building a community and growing a community and marketing yourself, I guess?
Yes and no. I say yes simply because it is, or it can be, a challenge to find the right community. I do think it's easy to get caught up in the wrong type of crowd and the wrong type of community, which I've luckily never experienced that, but I think it is important to kind of find people that are on the same wavelength as you. And it is tough at first to figure out, well, how do I find those people? And it took me a lot of time after coming back to where my community was primarily just like coworkers at like restaurants who I didn't really hang out with outside of work. So it wasn't like we were friends. We were just casual acquaintances. And it wasn't until I started going back to just being consistently creative and looking for, I built a community out of all of my theater buddies with Rover Drama Works, where they would do all these different plays. We'd all go support each other. They did these little play festivals and I met a ton of people there, which goes back to how I've always loved theater as like an easy way for me to make friends. Joining the acting class where I got to meet a bunch of people that loved the kind of same thing that I did. So just finding ways to find that community that, loves what you love, because that's the easiest way to kind of, it's one thing to just have a community of good people. It's another to have a community of good people that you can create with. And having just a solid group of people that you can constantly be building that creative momentum with is invaluable. And it's not tough, because once you find them, it's like lightning in a bottle. It's just, it's inexplainable. You click and connect.
Right. You've worked on tons of different shorts, and you started to go uphill and get some bigger roles. You were in FBI. Can you talk a little bit about that? That was, looking here, that was a bit before Stranger Things. I'm not sure how far apart you would say FBI was.
So believe it or not, FBI was released before Stranger Things, but I filmed it like 6 or 7 months after Stranger Things.
Really?
I filmed Stranger Things February of 2021. And then I filmed FBI, and that's the cool thing about like CBS network shows, is that they film them and pump them out super quick. But so for me, I really started to I started to really hit my stride basically in the bridge between December of 2020 to January of 2021. I had this huge emotional identity crisis where I was frustrated because I had been signed for 2 years and I hadn't been getting any callbacks. I think I had like one or two, but other than that, it didn't seem like I was building any traction whatsoever. And on top of that, I felt like I was missing. I was working a very physically demanding job that was making it very tough for me to ever be in a healthy mental headspace to approach any scene work. So what would happen is I would get an audition request and I would almost resent it, even though it would be this huge opportunity, because I would be so drained and they would be such quick turnarounds and I just wouldn't have the energy for it. And so the interesting thing is that a series of things happened in very quick succession, which is I realized I needed a change, or I would never have the emotional bandwidth to be able to book anything because I knew whatever I was doing wasn't working. So they were basically talking about maybe switching GMs. I knew about that because my mom is one of the owners. So I got a little bit of that nepotism plan for me. And then I was, for whatever reason, really drawn to, I needed a change. And so I just created this big PowerPoint presentation listing all of the different items that I would do if I was the new GM, and all of the different game plans I had, all of my goals, and all of this kind of cool stuff that I would do to pitch myself for the job. And I pitched it to basically my mom and the other owner at the space. And then I got offered to be the crew supervisor of this moving company that I've been working at. The day after I was promoted, I got the offer to be the GM of this space. And so of course I took it. Either a week or 2 weeks after that is when I ended up booking Stranger Things. And it's because, for whatever reason, in that time between finally leaving that moving company and starting here and actually having like the free time or the ability to start creating my own schedule and to not be physically exerting myself so much, I was able to give so much more energy into the acting craft and into my audition tapes. And then I started doing stuff like film studies where I would watch specifically River Phoenix because I most constantly get compared to him, and I try to see what is he doing that really works for him and that looks super cinematic that I can bring into what I've been doing. And it's no coincidence that as soon as I finally left what I knew wasn't working for me and entered this new opportunity, the very first audition I got after that was Stranger Things, which I then booked. So all of that to say, then I went and filmed Stranger Things. I then read to be series regular of season 4 of this other show, ended up getting pinned and then right of first refusal for it. So I was on this huge high while I was in Atlanta. Everything felt like it was going perfectly into place and my career was about to explode. Well, then season 4 of that show gets canceled. I come back to Texas and it's just nothing for like a long time. It even got to a point where I didn't get a single audition for like months on end. And then finally, 6 or 7 months later, after I went through multiple other identity crises, I finally got FBI.
Just crazy, just kind of like, let's talk on the subject that is kind of the main thing, Stranger Things. When you got, just kind of starting at the beginning, when you got that email or whatever back, what was your reaction? Like, were you just jaw dropped, or you were just like, wow, I don't.
Of course, I don't. I mean, I don't. It's one of those things you can't put words to. I mean, when you go so long wanting something so bad and then you have it, it's this huge, weird. I don't want to curse, but it's a mind f.
Yes.
It's indescribable, and really the cool thing about it too is that it was so quick. Like, I did my audition, I think 3 maybe 4 days later I got the call that I had booked it, and that 2 days after that I needed to fly out to Atlanta, and it all just happened very quickly, and it felt like a fever dream. And for me too, it was my sister's favorite show as well. And so being able to be part of something so special to her was such an honor. And yeah, it was, I think specifically for the first thing I've ever booked to be Stranger Things of all things. I mean, crazy. What an honor and blessing.
And that's crazy. Like, I know, like something like that big. Like I mentioned him in my other interviews. I interviewed the world's most famous extra. He's been in like 900 movies, and I mentioned my buddy Ethan. Ethan is an extra is a friend of mine, personal friend of mine, who used to have like an agent for extra work, and he got to be in a DC TV show just as an extra. And it's just such a crazy thing, like, you know, when you get into something that big, like even if it's just, you know, a small role, but for you, you had speaking lines, you had all this, you were in many of the episodes, so it's just really crazy to, you know, hear what it was like for you to get this, and kind of like, you know, going to film this, like, what was it like kind of going on this set, meeting the people, like being there again after all this bit of time where you had no work?
This is gonna sound maybe a little weird, but it both felt very nerve-wracking and normal at the same time. And I think that's the interesting thing, is that if you've ever been on a short film set, if you've ever like just filmed stuff with your friend, obviously it's a little bit different, but the only real difference is that the budget is so much bigger. Like, you get there and you think it's going to be this huge feeling and this groundbreaking experience. And it is that in some ways, but it's also one of those things where you do realize that it is put on this pedestal, and it's at the end of the day just people creating. Like, it's people doing the exact same thing that we've always done. Like, even on short films, they're basically doing the same thing people are doing on short films, but with more gadgets, more toys, more recognizable names and faces. And
right,
that was a really cool experience for me, because it reminded me that these are just real people. Like, it's people like me and you, mm-hmm. and it's not this thing that needs to be on this pedestal and that I couldn't feel worthy of belonging to, I guess. It also helped that my first scene was the one where I was just playing chess and I had no lines, so I had a ton of time to just kind of get acclimated to the experience of being on set, meeting Matthew, meeting Millie, and just kind of easing into it before I had to do all my crazy stuff.
Right. And I mean, my uncle, he does like film, he has his own little film company as well, and we filmed like a 30-minute movie, and they don't film the scenes in order. I know they don't film the scenes in order. Was that the same for you? Like, you mentioned the chess scene, but like, was it all just random, or was it actually in order this time?
So honestly, it actually was pretty chronological, and I think it was helped by just the fact that, I mean, all the scenes that I'm in take place in the same 2 settings. And so it was super easy to just kind of shoot it in order, because none of it was this bit. Both of the sets were in the same like little studio space. So it wasn't like this super arduous task to move everything to the, like, across the city so that we could go to a different one and then go back. It was super easy to go in chronological order, which was nice.
That's awesome. And you mentioned kind of like getting there, and I was just curious to ask you, were you and your other co-actors, were you guys, when you guys were preparing, you know, getting the makeup, were you guys in your own room? Because I mean, I watched some behind the scenes videos, and 11, she was I didn't see her in any of the behind the scenes videos, and so I assumed that you guys were put in another room doing your own thing. Was it like that, or was it actually together, preparing all together as a group?
Yes and no. So one thing, but the primary reason for that, to be honest, is I might. It's a complicated answer because for one, this was still on the height of the pandemic, so everybody had to be super safe, and so we had all the dividers up, and so we were being a lot more careful and a lot more secluded than we normally would be on a regular set. I think the other difference is that me and then the girl who plays number 5, Jessica Napier, were the only numbers that were over 18. And so me and her were the only ones that would actually like be on set in between takes. All of the other numbers had to go to mandatory on-set school. And so me and Jessica, we got to spend a lot of time together, and we got to socialize a lot. We would all that kind of stuff. And then of course, when it came time to like filming, you know, it's not like we were super distanced, but because of the big age gap, me and Jessica were just by happenstance. And it was the same with Millie. Like Millie also, she had to go to onset school, so we didn't really get a lot of time to socialize with her. So it was a different situation. Like when I was on FBI, it wasn't the same way. Everyone was just kind of hanging out together, and it was a little bit different, but that also wasn't in the height of the pandemic, so it was a little different. I'll tell you, McAuley, we put these moments on such a high pedestal that you get there, it's really so normal. Like yes, it's this person that we have seen on screen before, and yes, it's this person following, but it feels like you're meeting anybody. And maybe that's just my experience, and maybe that's because I'm a little bit older, so I have a little bit more like of I probably have a different relationship to that kind of thing than all of the younger kids and younger numbers, so they would probably have a different answer than I would.
Right.
But they're just all real people, and I think everybody there just loves the craft, and it made it super easy for it to not feel like this like big weird thing. And even when it came to like acting with them, it felt like, and that's what I mean by it feels like you're just on a short film or an acting class, but on a bigger scale, which is that it's just scene work. Like
exactly.
It's not anything different necessarily.
Yeah, and I get that. I mean, like for me, when I was younger, we used to go to a lot of Comic-Cons, so there was a lot of like celebrities there, and I had the pleasure of meeting the actor who did the voice of Hiccup from the How to Train Your Dragon series. You might know him. And so like when you meet them, I can definitely get you, like when you're at a younger age, you're just like, wow, like this is so crazy. But as you get older, I mean, for me, I'm still somewhat trying to get over it. You just, you sit down, you realize this is just this person I'm talking to is like me, but they've managed to be successful in their craft and what they're interested in.
I'll tell you this though, another reason I probably have a different relationship too is that because I am an actor, because I'm in the field, I think a lot of people, there's this like mystery behind it all, and that's part of like the intrigue of like fame and specifically actors and that kind of thing. But because I'm in the industry, it doesn't have that mystery, and so it's one of those things where I know that I'm there to do a specific job, and I'm very intimately aware of what that is. And so these are people that do the same thing as me. And so it just feels like we're on a similar playing field, I guess, because we're doing the same thing.
Exactly. And for this role, you actually had to cut your hair. I mean, for me, my hair grows like crazy, and I'm not sure how many days were in between the filming, but did you ever have to cut your hair again?
They shaved it like every week, easy. I ended up being there like 2 months, so I think I got probably like 8 or 9 haircuts. What was actually funny is I spent more time in the hair trailer than I spent in the makeup trailer. Like it took longer to make sure because I'm even though I tell everybody I'm brunette because I don't feel like I'm blonde, everybody still tells me I'm blonde. So I guess that's true. When I got my shaved head, I actually believe people that I'm blonde, but because my hair was so light on underneath, so they would actually have to like basically darken my hair so it didn't look like I was like completely bald, like Lex Luthor or something like that.
Right.
Um,
Definitely. And in this role you had to like there was a lot of like blood on the coming out of the eye and things like that. Like what was this like? I'm not sure if you've experienced a lot of like makeup in your time being an actor in both plays and in short films, but like what was it like? And not just the makeup, but because I mean, didn't they have to use harnesses for some of the shots, I believe. Like what was it like doing all
it
that?
was so cool. I think that it's one thing to act, it's another thing to see the movie magic and be part of that movie magic. Like two of my favorite days on set were both when, oh crap, that's a spoiler. There's one scene where I get thrown, and then there's another scene where I'm suspended in the air. Both of the scenes were by far my favorite to film because I got to be in the harness. I felt like I actually had superpowers in those scenes, and it was the most like immersive experience ever. In terms of like the blood, it's also super cool because with the eye blood, they would do it at the beginning of the day, and then all of us would just walk around with this blood on our face the whole entire day. So it was cool to just see a bunch of bloody kids walking around the entire day. um
That's nuts. I mean, my sister Zane, she's a really big fan of gore makeup, so she like shows me like all the stuff like she does like on the arm, and like it's super crazy what they can do. But just like being on that set, like it's crazy. Like looking at like when you're playing chess, like were you guys actually? And this is kind of a weird question, but were you guys actually playing chess, or were you just supposed to move the pieces around?
So because of continuity, and what's funny is there was so much continuity, and then you literally never saw our game of chess. So me and Morgan, we would be doing this I would be memorizing all of the different steps I was taking, and in the end, I guarantee you maybe see the chessboard once and would have no. But what's funny about that though is yes, we were actually playing a real game of chess, and there was so much, not to toot my own horn, but there was so much like cool nuanced layers that I was trying to do with the chess game that no one is ever going to see because it was never on camera. But we were doing this really cool thing where we had a very distinct contrast between the speed of our moves. And so Morgan would be like very precise and methodical with his moves, and I would be like very aggressive and very quick with my moves. All of the nuances that we were doing on the day, but will never actually be seen in any of the final cuts. Like no one could ever see that whenever they're watching the show. But all that to say, yes, while there wasn't a specific game of chess, me and Morgan had something going on.
Exactly, and it's just like looking at all these scenes, like I'm not sure if it wasn't till like the third episode or around there where you actually had dialogue, and that must have been fun, finally being able to speak and like kind of involving this. How did you practice getting into this role? I know people in Hollywood practice, do certain things, but how would you practice for this role?
Yeah, so it was, I think episode 5 was the first time I had like speaking lines, but I think it was like maybe week 2 that I was in Atlanta is when we finally started like filming all that kind of stuff. So I think I probably have a bit of a different approach than some actors in the sense of, for me, I hate feeling prepared because it makes me feel like I'm stuck in some ways. And like, for me, my most interesting choices are the spur of the moment ideas that I have in the moment. And so everything I do work wise is focused on the pre-life. And then I don't do any like scene breakdown or like script breakdown, because I find while it works for some people, it gets me way too in my head and it causes me to come across as rehearsed in my acting instead of natural and like I'm going with the flow. So what I do is I do a lot of journaling from the state of the character, and then I become very crystal clear with my relationship to every single character. So, and I get super specific with it. So, for example, and this is all stuff that's not in the script, but it helps me as an actor because it allows me to explore a bunch of different nuances in the scene, which is all of the numbers in my little girl beatdown gang, which is what we call ourselves in our Instagram group. I had such a distinctly different relationship with them. So, for example, number 3, who's played by Morgan, he was like my best bud. We're ride or dies. I know he'll do anything I say. Number 4, played by Sparrow, she's like the one that she's secretly trying to undermine me. And I know that she's just playing along because she doesn't want to have me give her wrath or bully her or anything like that. But really, she's trying to find some way. All that to say, all of those little like nuances in relationship do me much more good than doing like a scene breakdown where I'm like, oh, this line means this. I need to circle this and emphasize this, because none of that ever matters because you're just going to throw that all away by the time you get there. So I focus on pre-life, and then everything else I'm just malleable to.
Right. I find it very fascinating, journaling. I find that not a lot of people are doing that, in my opinion. Nowadays, my dad gave me a journal to me and my sister when we were younger, and we would write in it. It's just kind of interesting for me when you mentioned journaling, how that helped you with your character. Just kind of moving on, like, working in this film, like, I was looking up on Wikipedia, and according to what people say, like, your character is one of the most powerfulest aside from Eleven. Like, that's really crazy to like just to get that, like, wow, like, my character is valuable in this series. It's powerful, and it's crazy. And like, what would you say? I mean, this was one of the listener questions, but I'll kind of rephrase it differently. But like, working on this film, what did you learn the most? Like, what, leaving it, what'd you leave with? Like,
oh gosh, there are so many lessons, many of which, believe it or not, I actually learned from Millie. And honestly, I would say that's a big lesson, which is that I would say that the amount of like acting tips and like tricks that I learned from Millie is crazy. Even though I was 21 at the time, she was 17, she was younger than me, I still learned so much from her. And the reason I bring that up is because one of the big takeaways I had is that, oh, I can learn something from everybody. It doesn't matter if I'm older than them, younger than them, the same age, there is something of value that they have to offer that I can learn from. And I think realizing that there's something to be curious about in everything, and exploring that curiosity really is the easiest way to grow in any avenue, because you're like, my key word that I use all of the time is malleable, because I feel like that's what acting and what life is all about. It's all about finding the easiest way to become as malleable as possible, because the fact is things change so quickly. The second you get rigid and stuck in one specific way of doing things, or one specific approach, or one specific mindset, you stop growing, and you stop being able to progress in any sort of fashion. So that was the big takeaway, is I can learn something from everybody in some way. And the second is, my identity is not defined by what I book. And that's a weird lesson to have from that project, but it came because of the identity crisis I had from not being able to share it for so long. I was one of the last people allowed to announce it, to where I couldn't announce it until the day that it dropped, just because the numbers were a bit of like a spoiler to be announced themselves. And I had to learn so much, or I had to dig so much into, why do I care so much that I'm not allowed to share this? Why can't I just be happy for myself and let that be enough? And it was this big realization that I've been living my life purely trying to fit into some mold that other people have placed on me, instead of the mold that I want to build for myself. And so having that opportunity to not be able to share it, to not be able to basically put that as part of my identity, let me realized that it's never good to make that part of my identity anyway. So it prevented me from making some superficial thing be something that me.
And it's just really nice hearing that, because I'm like, it gave you that time to sit down and, understand and kind of like think about that. Kind of going back to, I kind of didn't really follow the order of questions. This would probably be a good kind of ending question, but like, working on this set, like, I know a lot of the times working on projects, the cast members get to take away something from like actual object, like a picture, or like a prop or whatever, like they give it to them. Like for you, was there anything you took away from the film that you kind of have, like, oh hey, yeah, I got that from the film?
Oh, McAuley, I was way too scared. Netflix, and specifically Stranger Things, is so crazily, like, not crazily, they're rightfully cautious, but man, I was too nervous to try anything like that. I wanted to ask if I could take my hospital gown, but in the end I decided that I don't want to ask. And so unfortunately I don't have anything aside from, like, I have some like cool little like memorabilia items that people gave me. In terms of, like, I got a really cool hat from one of my cast members, Hendrix Yancey. Shout out to her. She plays 13. Erica, who I worked with on The Gifted, gave me a cool Stranger Things season 4 hat as well. I got a couple of, like, so the girl who plays number 4, Sparrow, her mom also, like, did a fan drawing of one of the scenes that I did as well, that I still have and got to hold on to. So, Candice from the wardrobe department, she gave me a whole bunch of stickers to put on my Stranger Things binder that she had. So while I don't have any like specific like Stranger Things set items or character pieces, I do have a lot of memorabilia from set and things to remember it by.
Well, that's awesome, getting to take that away, with you. One thing I thought was fascinating, I'm not sure if there was any reason behind this, but like looking through like the marketing, I guess I would expect there to be like, like a photo shoot. But was there any like official photo shoots with your characters all together?
No, I think they were, at one point, I think they were planning it, but they never ended up doing it. I did my own photo shoot, so people that are on my Instagram could probably see all of the different. So I met with the photographer that I work with all the time. Her name's Madeline Potter. She goes by both, but I work with her all the time, and we did a specifically Stranger Things photo shoot with my shaved head as soon as I got back that were character themed. But other than that, like specifically from production, they never did.
Well, at least you have the video, at least you were in it, and so you have like the video, and it's like you're there.
Exactly. I have some stills.
Definitely. I'm trying to think. I was prepared to ask a few more questions. I'm just trying to think if there was any other questions to ask involving working on Stranger Things, because I don't want to get too far into it for those who haven't watched it, but I also don't want to get fixated on a certain subject or person, but just kind of like leaving the film, you're leaving, you're saying goodbye to everybody. Did Millie, did you get to like nice working with you, it was awesome, like something like that, or was it just like she just left and I never really said goodbye?
We had a couple of moments. So and this honestly just ties into me being over 18 at that time and all the other numbers being, so it was actually really sad because all of the numbers on like one of our last days were wrapped while I was still in the trailer, and I didn't get to, or no, actually they were wrapped while I was like filming on set. And so I didn't get to say goodbye to any of them. And me and Millie had like a couple of like brief moments in past, but again, because she would be going back and forth from school, we didn't get to like we had a couple of cool moments. She's super cool, super grounded, and much more down to earth than I ever would have thought before working with her. But we didn't get to talk a whole lot. I had like a brief moment with Jamie Campbell Bower after Jessica Napier kept pushing me to go talk to him because I got a little bit nervous because I was like, everybody's been going up to talk to him. I don't want to, hey, can I take a picture with you too? So I just kind of talked with him and told him that he did a really good job. He said I did a really good job, which meant a lot to me because any good feedback from an actor that's been in the business for a while is super cool. I didn't have a lot of moments with Matthew Modine, but he is super interesting, super cool. Because of the way they shot everything, because the kids were under 18 and they had what people in the industry call pumpkin times, which basically means you can no longer use them. They've reached their labor law limit. I was always saved for the very end. And so I spent a lot of time in my trailer and a lot of time just kind of like not basically being off camera so they could get all of the kids. And then I would kind of be there at the very end. And so because of the way that was framed, I would usually be the last to leave. And so I wouldn't have the ability to really say a lot bye or stuff like that.
Definitely. I'm not sure if they did a premiere for Stranger Things season 4, but were you ever invited or did you ever go to that?
No, I know Christian, who played number 10. I think he was invited because he was in the first 10 minutes of the show, but no, I'm not surprised that I wasn't, because I wasn't even allowed to announce the casting until the day that it dropped. And because I'm really only in the last couple of episodes, and like, I'm a big character in the sense of like, I'm not like tiny, but I am a small character in the grand scheme of things. So, it's not like I think they're gonna like have me on any panel or anything like that. It's a cool thing. I've gotten a good amount of traction from it, but you know, I know that it was just a small part of a really cool show that has a lot of lore to it. So
exactly, and it was cool hearing you sitting down and writing the journal and kind of like the lore with that. Friends of mine have been in films and they would talk about like my buddy Ethan, for example, when he was an extra, he would work with his friends and they'd like hang out and they'd be talking about their character and talking about like their past and making like things up and making jokes about how the main characters would like have a big party in the future and they all would be invited and just kind of like having fun with it. And that's important, having fun while you're working and also staying professional at the same time. The question I always ask my guests at the end so I can pass on something to the listener, what is something that you would like to pass on to the listeners listening at this point right now?
There are so many routes I could go with that. I think one specific thing I'll say, and it's funny that I'm a little caught off guard because this is all, I have a podcast as well, even though I have not been proactive about it in a while. But I also ask a similar question to all my guests, and they're always caught off guard. So it's cool being on the other end. We're like, oh, yeah, what would I say, you know what? There are two things I'll say. One is that I've constantly found that embracing my authenticity has been the easiest way to connect with people and to feel fulfilled in life, because the more you embrace that authenticity, the more you know that everything is happening because you are you and that people love you because you are you, and it's not this facade. And it just, that authentic part of you gives you the peace of mind knowing that it is your genuine self that is creating everything versus some persona that you have to be loved. The other side of that as well is that I've found that authenticity is the easiest way to connect with people, and it's I'm sorry, I went all off on my own little what was I saying? So my personal like life mantra right now is celebrate privately, love publicly. And maybe that's what I would say I would pass along, which is that it's not that you have to keep everything close to the chest, never celebrate anything. It's more so the idea that I never want to feel like I have to share something with people and people have to have a very specific response to something for that to be fulfilling to me or for that to be enough. And I want to always have my personal growth and what makes me happy be enough for me to celebrate without needing to bring other people into that. And then love publicly, which is that the only thing I can control in other people is the way I show up for them. And so all of my focus in terms of other people comes from trying to be the best version of myself for them I can be, whether it's be the best friend that I can, be the best son, be the best brother, all of those different ways of just showing up, because at the end of the day, that's what people remember, and that's what makes us feel happy. And that's why I keep saying community, like the people matter more than any success or any achievement, because if you don't have anybody to share any of that with, I don't know, it's just isolating. So yes, celebrate privately because my happiness is enough in of itself without having to put it out into the world. Love publicly because that's the only controllable thing that I have with other people.
Awesome. Thank you just so much for answering that question. This is kind of the last segment before we wrap up. We have a few questions from people. I think we have like this one. This is the girl that I actually this is a girl that I know here in my city, and she was the one who followed you. That's actually how I kind of found you out. And so if I hadn't looked at the post, I probably wouldn't be here right now. But her question, she's a big fan. I told her, I was the first person, I actually told her, I'm like, the interview, it's happening. And she was just like, oh my gosh, yes, I love his character so much. It's so like, he's so good. And so her question, Danica, is wondering, what was your favorite memory from the set of Stranger Things?
Well, Danica, my favorite memory was hanging out in the little set hallway with my buddy Luke Bambrick. He was one of the lockdown PAs that was in charge of making sure that everything was quiet on set, all that kind of stuff. And I just randomly ventured into this like back set hallway, just kind of exploring. And then I saw him there and we just started talking, and he then became like one of my definitely my best friend out in Atlanta. And we ended up going to explore the real abandoned Hawkins lab. We would go watch like Chernobyl up in my hotel room just to hang out after set. And so that was one of my favorite memories, simply because it was the moment that I met somebody that I consider one of my best friends even now, and that has just such a pure, genuine heart. And that is one of those, you have those people that you just instantly connect with and know that no matter how long it goes between times you talk, you know that y'all will be in each other's corner. And it's always cool when you have that moment that you can meet that person.
Exactly. Emily is wondering, what was the audition process like?
Well, Emily, it was like whiplash, because first off, the cool thing about this one is that I read for Stranger Things for Eddie Munson before they called me in for 2. And because I had read with Carmen Cuba for like 6 other roles before this, she actually requested me to read for 2. So I wasn't submitted for it. They reached out because they wanted to see what I would do with it. And then I got booked off one tape, which is every actor's dream, because we all hate the whole callback process, all that kind of stuff. And I just threw one tape in, and then boom, it just kind of went from there.
That's awesome. This is the last listener question. This is kind of, I'm not sure if you're doing any schooling now, but this is just from a guy named John. John is wondering, has it been hard balancing acting and schooling in your life?
Well, John, I'm going to say yes and no. Only because I'm going to substitute. It depends, because what I think is probably happening is John thinks that I'm still like in high school or college or something like that, which I'm not. Even if I had like graduated from college, I would have graduated like last year or something like that. So I'm not in school. But if it's like, how do I balance acting with work, which is being the general manager of this event venue? Holy crap, it is a lot sometimes. It was crazy when I was on set, because I would be answering phone calls, responding to emails, and setting up tours of the venue while I was on set filming, trying to still get bookings and organize everything from a whole new state. But when it comes to like schooling, which I'm gonna just use in terms of like working on my craft, it's not hard because it's something I genuinely love. And it's one of those things where you don't have to make time for it because you just naturally have the time for it when you love it. It's one of those things where they always say that you want to find what you're naturally passionate about and what you actually love in life, because then it doesn't feel like effort. It doesn't feel like work. And really the key to anyone's success, which is why I commend all of the work that you're doing and why hopefully you hold on to that, and I'm sure you will, is consistency. And the only way to be consistent in anything is to have that love for it. Because if you don't have any love for it, you're going to burn out. Like it's how it is. You can try to have as much willpower as you want, but scientifically, people only have so much willpower they can have in a single given day. I don't know the specific like frequency of it, but it is very finite no matter how hard you try. So finding that thing that takes no willpower and that you just do, that's, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, and I'll be sure to leave Tristan's social media in the description below. And thank you guys, listeners, for listening, and I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day.